Back at it here with the Kaufman Corner podcast. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City, joined as always by the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, of course, one of the founders of Baseball Prospectus, formerly the author of Rany on the Royals, and, I guess just the ultimate think tank when it comes to all things pitching and all things Cal Eldred. Rany, first of all, how are you?
I am well.
Are
Despite
you?
despite what the Royals have given us this last week, I'm doing well.
I don't know that I buy that.
I've learned to compartmentalize my life. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. All right. I'll take that. Listen, we sit here talking pitching. We sit here talking the Royals at the bottom of the standings, as it has been for quite some time now, as they've been near the bottom, but now officially at the bottom as they cleared that hurdle this week. But the pitching is an issue. The Royals made the move for Terry Shumpert. They continued to resist it. We saw Brady Singer maybe come back to reality and get knocked around. We saw the Royals get beaten 2 out of 3 by the Astros. Where do you sit right now when it comes to whether or not Cal Eldred has made up any ground on, justifying where he sits right now as the Royals pitching coach?
Well, if by making up ground you mean he continues to dig deeper and deeper into the mantle of the earth, heading straight for the core, the fiery molten core, then yes, he's doing an excellent job there. Soren, I come to you with news.
With news. Oh, good. News. We want news.
Well, I don't know if it's good news, but it's news. As you know, we have been very critical of Cal Eldred on this podcast, and I have been critical of him in other venues, i.e. Twitter, for several years. But I have always danced around the specific proclamation that Cal Eldred deserves to be fired. We've talked about this before, that, the bar for advocating explicitly for the dismissal of a coach has to be very high, because their performance is a little bit, more difficult to evaluate than a player's performance. And once you go down that road, you can't. It's hard to turn back. Like that, it's a hard thing to call for anybody to lose their job in any profession. And I have tried to be a little less impulsive, a little less reckless as I get older, a little less willing to throw bombs, a little more cognizant of the collateral damage that occurs when you say so-and-so deserves to be fired. So I have very studiously avoided the explicit sentence, Cal Eldred deserves to be fired. Cal Eldred deserves to be fired, Soren. I have reached that point. I have reached that level. In full awareness of what it means to say that. It brings me no joy to say that.
Right.
I would like to think that I understand the implications of what I am saying. But if there is any standard for a major league coach to maintain their job, one of the most coveted jobs in all of sports, to be a coach at the major league level, if there's any standard at all, he has failed to reach that standard. And it really struck me this week. I mean, it's not that the Royals have been pitching well all season, but let's just look at since we last spoke, or let's just look at last week. Since last Sunday, the Royals have played 7 games. They've given up 7 or more runs in 5 of those games. In a season in which offense is down as low as it's been in almost a decade. And in particular, in the American League. I mean, I think this is something I didn't appreciate quite so much, because the lack of a designated hitter has sort of hidden it in the National League. But the National League, when you take out the pitcher hitting effect, has been the better offensive league for many years now. And this year, with the DH being fully installed in both leagues, you can really see the difference. The National League, the league ERA is quite a bit higher than the American League. The National League ERA, as we speak, coming in today, was 4.13. The American League ERA, 3.79, which is, I mean, that's almost like early 90s territory. This is as pitching dominant a league as it's been in 30 years. But you wouldn't know that the league ERA was 3.79 if you've been watching the Royals pitch all season, because the Royals ERA coming into today was 5.09.
Yes.
All right. And it went up today after giving up 7 more runs. The second worst ERA in the league, the Oakland A's, are at 4.24. So we're not talking about the Royals are the worst pitching staff. That they set that mark a while ago. They are 85 points worse than the next worst team in the American League. Right, almost a full run.
Yeah, and I don't want to stop you on your roll, but I mean, just in the interest of being fair, I mean, we do need to point out, yes, the Royals have the worst in the AL. Yes, it's that much further than the A's, but the A's are 23rd. Behind them go Cubs, Giants, Pirates, then the Royals, and behind the Royals are Rockies, Nationals, Reds.
Again, right. That's why I brought the league difference up.
Right.
There is, in a large part, because of the ballparks in the National League are, on the aggregate, much better for hitters. You think about the Rockies, you think about the Diamondbacks, and some of the ballparks in the National League. That's a big focus, and that's why I think it's, if you just look at the major league, runs, ERA standings, the Royals don't stick out like a sore thumb. But I really think you have to separate the leagues to realize what's going on. And it's not just, I mean, you can look at ERA, but look at every other stat. Look at the component stats. What are the things you would think of a pitching coach having an effect on? Strikeouts. The Royals have 48 fewer strikeouts than every other team in the American League. All right. 48 fewer strikeouts. This is the fundamental. The Royals don't miss bats.
Right. In
a game in which strikeouts are more important than they have ever been, the Royals do not strike out hitters. But they also don't like to throw strikes. They have more walks than everybody in the league except for the White Sox. All right. They've given up more hits per inning than every other team in the American League, despite what I would consider to be an above average defense. So they do nothing well. They do nothing remotely close to average. And they are on pace to set one of the highest ERAs relative to their league in 60 years. Their ERA plus right now, let me see exactly what it is, 79. It was 78 yesterday, going into yesterday's game. The shutout they threw, which even that, let's talk about that. Like, they threw a shutout yesterday, all right? Great. Kris Bubic came up, threw a shutout, 6 shutout innings. He also walked 3 and struck out 3. Looking for the box score here. I had that up.
5 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 3 walks.
Right. The whole team, the team as a whole had as many walks as strikeouts, which, again, that is a theme here. And Kris Bubic barely threw 50% strikes. He threw 52 of 98 pitches for strikes. That's barely 50%. The team as a whole, 82 of 151. So even in one of their best outings of the season, they were barely throwing 50, maybe 54% strikes as a team. And even more concerning was the comments that Kris Bubic made after the game. I don't know if you saw this. Alec Lewis tweeted out, here, let me read you the tweet. Kris Bubic said his focus at AAA Omaha was essentially to throw fewer fastballs. Quote, if you look at success rates based on pitches and sequences, that was a big emphasis down there. Emphasis mine, down there in Omaha. Pitch usage before today. So before yesterday's start, Kris Bubic's pitch breakdown in the major leagues, 53% fastballs, 24% changeups, 23% curveballs. But 53 fastball, 24 changeup. Yesterday's start, 50% changeups, 34% fastballs. So basically, Kris Bubic went out there and threw a heck of a lot more secondary pitches and a heck of a lot fewer fastballs. Which is to say, he's basically doing what every other team in baseball has been emphasizing over the last couple of years. And it's this weird paradox in the sport right now where pitchers are throwing their fastball harder than ever, but also throwing it less often than ever. And you know why they do that? Because it works. And other teams know it works, and they have been emphasizing it for years. Apparently, the Royals are not, or at least the Royals up here in Kansas City are not. Chris Bubich, who I'm going to apply a stereotype here and say is probably a pretty intelligent guy, given that he went to Stanford, went down to Omaha, talked about success rates based on pitches and sequences. Again, you use the fastball to set up your secondary pitches. You throw them more, it makes your fastball more effective. And in fact, the very last pitch of the night was his hardest pitch. He got a strikeout on his very last pitch of the 6th inning at 93.5 miles an hour. But it looked even faster to that hitter because he had barely thrown any fastballs the whole game. But why did he have to go down there to Omaha to do that? Because Dane Johnson, the Omaha pitching coach, maybe is more adept with what's going on with pitching at the major league level today in 2022 than Cal Eldred is. But even with that outing, Chris Bubich, again, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. His strikeout to walk ratio is still under 1. He has 14 walks and 13 strikeouts this season. In all of Major League Baseball, going into today, there were 7 pitchers who had at least as many walks as strikeouts and who had at least thrown 18 innings in the major leagues. Okay? 7 pitchers.
Another question. Let me see if I can guess the question. How many of them were Kansas City Royals?
How many of them were Kansas City Royals? If the Kansas City Royals were one team and every other team in baseball were the other team, who wins?
I'm cheating.
No cheating. You don't have time for that.
3. They've got 3, right?
Wrong. They have 4.
Now
the 7 pitchers: Dallas Keuchel, who, by the way, was released because apparently there's a rule in Major League Baseball that you can release a player who's not performing, even if he's making 8 figures.
Right.
Someone should tell the Royals this. That might impact the way they treat Carlos Santana. But apparently it is legal. So Dallas Keuchel no longer on the White Sox because he had 20 walks and 20 strikeouts. Spencer Watkins, pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles, has done it. And Bryce Elder, a pitcher on the Atlanta Braves, has 14 walks and 12 strikeouts. Carlos Hernandez, Jonathan Heasley, Ronald Bolaños, and Chris Bubich have all at least as many walks as strikeouts. If you want to raise the bar and say more walks than strikeouts, then you can take out Bolaños, but you also take out Dallas Keuchel. So then the Royals have 3 out of 5. Either way, they have more pitchers with at least or more walks than strikeouts than the rest of baseball combined.
And you're saying this is a bad thing, Rany?
My 30 years of analytical expertise leads me to believe that, yes, as a pitcher, you want less walks and more strikeouts. Cal Eldred may disagree with me based on the results of his pitching staff. Right. But that's what I think. And here's what's frustrating here is, like, you take these pitchers in isolation, and I think they all have. It's not a talent issue. This is not an Allard Baird 2005 Royals. We don't have talent problem. Chris Bubich, I think, can be an effective pitcher in the major league level, and I say that because he was an effective. I mean, he came up straight out of A-ball in 2020 because of the pandemic. The Royals brought him to the major leagues without a minor league season. He had never pitched out of A-ball, had a 4.32 ERA. There was a lot of good there. Last year, he made 20 starts, 29 outings, 130 innings, a 4.43 ERA. He was probably a little bit lucky, but the point is he was 22, 23 years old. There is talent here. Former, supplemental first-round pick or early second-round pick. Really good, left-hander with intelligence, and I think he's more of a finesse guy, which makes the walks that much more galling. Has he taken a step forward? No, he's taken a step back. Jonathan Heasley, who actually today had walked 2 and struck out 5, he had his best outing of the season, still has more walks than strikeouts, so it doesn't affect the data here. But Jonathan Heasley, I mean, he has the sign of a bulldog out there, because I really feel like he gets, despite his struggles with command and strikeouts, he actually has kept the Royals in a lot of games. I think his ERA is like around 4.5, which on this team is not bad at all. And obviously Carlos Hernandez, throws in the upper 90s. So, I mean, these are not guys who don't have talent. These are guys who are not being served well by their pitching coach. And you saw Bubic's comments. Obviously Brady Singer had to go back to the minor leagues to learn to throw his changeup, and his changeup percentage this year, after throwing changeups in about 4.5% of his pitches in 2020 and about 3.8% last year, his changeup percentage usage is up to 10.5% this year after going back down to the minor leagues. And he got hit up a little bit his last start out, but his strikeout and walk numbers are much better this year. So again, I don't think Brady Singer is the problem. If one guy is the problem, it's one thing. If every pitcher is the problem, then the pitcher isn't the problem. It's the pitching coach. And the level of incompetence from this pitching staff is reached a critical point. And the other thing I want to say is this is not new. This is not like Cal Eldred came into the season with a sterling reputation, or Cal Eldred is a new pitching coach and still finding his way. Can I read to you, and I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I just want to point out the things that I was talking about Cal Eldred in years past. So let's go back 1 year, 2021. This is a tweet I sent out July 1st, 2021. At this point, I don't even need to advocate for Cal Eldred to lose his job. It's a fait accompli. But the Royals should stop delaying the inevitable and get it over with. Okay. How naive I was a year ago to assume it had been a fait accompli just because the Royals pitching staff was terrible last year after being terrible the year before and the year before and the year before that. But that was 2021. 2020, I do not find any tweets from me about Cal Eldred, probably because the season didn't start until the end of July. 2019, 3 years ago, after a series of tweets about how the Royals were this will make you laugh. The Royals at 15 and 27. Apparently, there was a quote from Ned Yost a week before about how the Royals still felt that they were in the race, and then they went 3-9 after that quote. I don't know if that sounds at all familiar with what the Royals have said this year, but time is a flat circle. We're just repeating ourselves. But after commenting on that, I wrote, I don't know what the solution is, but I find it harder and harder to see how Cal Eldred is part of one. I liked him as a player and was interested to see how he'd do as a pitching coach when he was hired. But the results haven't been there. That was 3 years ago. Let's go back to 2018 now. Okay? 4 years ago. I responded to a follower on Twitter.
Real quick, time out. Can you tell me how long it took you to go back and find these tweets?
A couple minutes. The Twitter search function, if you know how to use it, is actually pretty valuable. So, okay. But this one I love even more because I'm responding to a follower who asked a question. Here's the question: so, should we ship Jakob Junis back to AAA? I mean, we have no other options, but this is what his 6th straight start of getting rocked. Is he in a long line of flash in the pan Royals starting pitching prospects? Honestly, he has shown no signs of improvement. That was somebody's quote about Jakob Junis 4 years ago. My response was no, but at some point we need to be asking ourselves if Cal Eldred's job security needs to be evaluated. On the one hand, Brad Keller, who was having a stellar season. On the other hand, literally every other pitcher on the roster. 4 years ago, Soren. The Royals brought him back in 2019. Same thing. They brought him back in 2020. Same thing. 2021. Same thing. 2022. Here we are. And Jakob Junis. I think it's time to do our Jakob Junis minute, which I could easily extend into the Jakob Junis hour, but I'll try to be merciful to everybody listening. Jakob Junis made 2 starts this week. His first start, I think, was Monday. Was pulled in the 5th inning, a 4 1/3 innings. Maybe at his pitch count, but three hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts. A short outing, but an effective outing. Today, 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 2 hits, 8 strikeouts. His ERA is now down to 2.51. The Mercury News ran an article earlier this week. Let me find you the title of this article. I think that the title says it all. How Jakob Junis found the slider that has made him the San Francisco Giants' hidden gem. By throwing his slider, the subheadline, by throwing his slider more than any other starter in MLB, Junis has been a surprise success story for the San Francisco Giants. And I think more than anything else, Jakob Junis' success, widely predicted success the moment he signed there, has to be the nail in the coffin for Cal Eldred's job. It's right there. How he found the slider. The slider has been there. It's not a new slider, but he's throwing it incredibly often, much more often than he did in Kansas City. And he is the ace of the Giants staff. He is pitching better than any other pitcher, any pitcher in the Royals organization. And again, they cut him. I don't think we're talking enough about this. They released a pitcher who immediately, it's not like 3 years later. This isn't, I don't know, Jason Adam or somebody the Royals had years ago and is now finding success. Pitchers, they move from organization to organization. Occasionally they'll have success. No, this is immediately after he was released. Immediate success. And not just, oh, he's being good in the bullpen. No, he's in there. He moved into the rotation. He is the best pitcher in that rotation. The talent was there all along. And it's not like he was a Kansas City Royal for 3 minutes. He was a Kansas City Royal for 5 years. So that's where we're at. So I appreciate you indulging me in this soliloquy,
absolutely.
But it needed to be said. I've had enough.
It did. And let me add this to the equation. We reached out requesting some Royals folks to come on the show, one of which was Cal Eldred, who we were told politely declines to come on and chat. What would you make of that? Is that a guy that says, I got nothing that I can possibly say that's going to make this better? To me, I think it can cut both ways. You can say, listen, what am I going to say that's going to make anybody think differently of me? We just have to pitch better, right? Or you could say, well, let me put a human voice to it, because watching a guy on TV, it can feel sometimes like it's, just a fictional character, right? A movie show, TV show, but you hear a voice, you hear a guy talk about it, you hear about what the struggles are, and it at least puts a human face to it, right? And so maybe that backs people off a little bit. Maybe you give some context to what it is you're working on and why you're trying to do it better. I don't think it's a positive when he decides not to come on. The Royals organization, which I applaud and commend, allows, unlike, say the Chiefs or most of the NFL, their coaches to come on and talk. And I think it's usually quite insightful. And I always feel like I come away understanding more about what some of the struggles are if things aren't going well. More of some of the things that are positives. Like when I would talk to Kevin Seitzer, when Alex Gordon started taking off, and he talked about, well, these are the things we worked with. And I always remember him saying, fight at 50. He said, he tries so hard. I told him, listen, you got it. We want to try hard. We want to work every day, but stop pressing like max effort all the time. That was part of how he unlocked Alex Gordon's potential as a hitter. There are things, that said, that could provide insight, in my opinion. He says no. He says no. I'm not going to come on. Politely declines was the message that I was given. Is that a guy who knows the end is imminent? Is it, what do you think about that decision to not come on and discuss what's going wrong?
Right. And this is where I'm sensitive to the human element. Where if I were in his shoes, I'd probably politely decline as well. And I don't hold that against him at one bit, because what's he going to say? I do think that on some level, it's a recognition that however much he can, rationalize the Royals' lack of success, and I'm sure there are explanations for it, but to try and defend that record in a 15-minute radio segment is going to be difficult. And I will say also, though, I think that I assumed that if he had come on, you would have asked about Jakob Junis.
Yes.
And to me, Jakob Junis is the thing that if you're Cal Eldred, you can't defend, because if you want to bring up the struggles of any individual pitcher on the Royals, you can sugarcoat a little bit. You can put a positive spin on it, and the Royals are very good at this. Not because they're in denial or they're trying to blow smoke necessarily. The Royals are very good about defending their players. They're always going to focus on the positives, because it's part of being a good boss is not throwing your employees under the bus, and I respect that. So if you ask, why was Carlos Hernandez, pitching so poorly? I'm sure they can emphasize the things that he did do well, and spin it as these are the things that he's working on in the minor leagues, and that we're optimistic he'll figure it out and he'll find success soon. I don't know how you spin the guy who's not in Kansas City, who's now pitching at a level far beyond anything he did when he was with you for 5. You're not going to badmouth what he's doing now, and you can't minimize what he's doing now, and you also can't go back and put a positive spin on his performance. We can look at the numbers and see what the performance was, and if you say, oh, he actually pitched better here than you think, well, then why did you cut him?
Right.
This is ultimately, to me, try to defend Jake Junis is impossible. And so I don't blame him, frankly, for being unwilling to defend the indefensible to you. I just don't understand why he's not being forced to defend the indefensible to people in that organization.
I think at some point, doesn't it have to reach ownership's level where they go, come on, what's going on here? And if Mike Matheny won't make the call, if JJ Picollo won't make the call, then Dayton Moore won't make the call. John Sherman will make the call at some point, right? I mean, I think he's an intelligent man that understands baseball, that was within the Indians organization. I'm sure there are reports that are given to ownership on a fairly regular basis. He's seen how a successful pitching staff can be built and an organization can be successful in pitching. I don't think that any of this is lost on him. I also think, one of the things, that when I heard all of the conversation, by the way, I also asked for Dayton Moore. He politely declined to come on. I was offered that there's a division of jobs between JJ and Dayton Moore, and if I want to discuss what that division is, somebody at Kauffman would be happy to discuss it with me. Okay, Dayton Moore was talking 3 weeks ago when Terry Shumper was fired, but yeah, and I get it. Listen, I don't think that's a bad move. If JJ Picollo is the general manager, and he's the guy who allegedly moved, or not allegedly, they say, was the one who said, listen, we got to make a change at the hitting spot, then okay, he should be the guy up front, talking about it. Now, it's been made very clear also that Dayton Moore still ultimately has to sign off on it, because it took 10 to 12 days after JJ brought up the idea of making the change for it to happen. So seemingly that would lead you to believe that it took, a week and a half to almost 2 weeks of lobbying Dayton Moore to get him to make that move. Right. I just, there is a difference about being a president and or general manager of a baseball team when your owner is a state away, right? As opposed to a large collection of individuals that live in your town, right, that have to hear my fat ass drone on about the failures that are going on, about hear Curtis's fat ass talking about on a radio show. If you're catching us here via the podcast, by the way, we stream live Sunday nights. We're back on to Sundays at 10 o'clock Central Time. So if you want to catch us, by the way, we always appreciate, got a lot of loves up there, the likes, the loves, retweets, all our stuff. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you want to do that, we'd really appreciate that. Helps us out. Don't cost you nothing. But to me, I think that's one of the things, one of the dynamics that is different. We heard a very honest and open Dayton Moore. You didn't necessarily just call up there and say, hey, I want him today in like 2 hours and he'd be on. You had to do a little scheduling, but you could always get him on. I get it. Things are different. And I'm not trying to paint something here about Dayton Moore not wanting to come on my radio show now. It's just different. We've asked for JJ Picollo. Let's see if JJ Picollo will come on. But I think it's a different environment when you've got in-town owners and lots of them. It's not just David Glass, right? There's a lot of different people. And, there's been some conversations that maybe a lot of them are much more vocal than what this regime has been used to, with just one guy, David Glass, bunkered in down in Arkansas, right? Like, it's a little different when they're here watching the news, watching everything that's going on and seeing the frustration, and they're feeling the frustration. I don't know how to take it that Cal Eldred won't come on. I don't know that it's a bad move. I don't know that it's a good move, but I'm with you. We've come so far that I believe that the organization has just dug in like World War I trench warfare. That we're going down here and we're not sticking our head up to see what's coming. No matter what, we don't care. We're in the trenches.
Well, you know what happened in World War I? Lots of soldiers died.
Yes.
So You know,
Yes.
so
And they didn't see the tanks coming, which the technology is what ended World War I, was a tank could finally just roll right across the trenches, and it was done. The
right, and the other teams
stalemate that
have
was there
tanks,
was broken.
and the Royals are still throwing their men over in waves into machine gun fire and barbed wire, and wondering why they're not moving. No, I completely agree with you.
By the way, I was asked this: does Cal go on other shows? Not that I know of. All I really know about is what goes on my station. I haven't heard him on my station. I don't know about other stations or not. You know, it's. By the way, let's throw out. Carl said I wouldn't miss the weekly Rany Rant for the world.
I need to trademark that Rany Rant. That's perfect. That
a Rany
Rant is one of the auto corrections for my name. So I appreciate that one.
I like it. No, but I mean, I do think it's a different environment, and I think it's one that maybe they're like, okay, we can't be as open and honest. We can't talk as much because if it just fires up people, we've already got owners breathing down our necks.
Right.
And listen, there were some rumblings of some discontent last year as well. That maybe they're, the management, the different people that are being brought in are not all on the same page as the baseball regime. And that, listen, and that's not getting better now with lack of fans in the stands, frustration or apathy over people not being able to see the games because of the way the TV deal is structured now. I'm with you. Listen, I'll state again. If Cal Eldred doesn't need to go, somebody else does. Somebody in your development side does need to go. Somebody in your drafting side. But to your point about Jakob Junis, that seems to kill the concept of it being a draft identification thing. They gave extra money, way above slot money, to get Jakob Junis signed because they knew he was a talent. They gave what was the equivalent of, I think, third round money to Jakob Junis.
$575,000 back in 2011.
Maybe that was second round money. I'm not sure. I think it'd be about third.
That was that was the Bubba Starling draft, which at the time I think was the most money any team had ever spent. This is the last year before they introduced the hard slotting that you have today, where teams get penalized losing like first round draft picks if they go beyond a certain amount. That was still the Wild West days where you could spend whatever you wanted. And the Royals, to their credit, David Glass authorized all this money. Bubba Starling got $7.5 million. Brian Brickhouse got $1.5 million. Ken Gallagher was a second round pick that year. But if you actually look at it, like Ken Gallagher and Jake Junis are really the only things that have come out of that draft. But Jake Junis was a 27th rounder. They gave him a ton of money. Took him a while to develop in the minor leagues. He was a tremendous scouting and development story. And they got to the major league level and he stalled. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, that he's pitching coach for basically his entire major league career had been Cal Eldred up until this season.
But my point there is that you can't point to anything. He pitched well in the minor leagues, got to the big leagues, never could have any kind of consistency, and is now left and is finding that consistency with another team. I mean, that to me would seem to be the final nail in the coffin. And I can tell you from conversations I've had with people over there, they bristle about Jakob Junis. I mean, they will beat you to the name Jakob Junis before you even get to him in conversations because they know it's coming. They know people are talking about it.
And the one thing I do want to point out also on top of all that is that the second he was released and signed with the Giants, we were predicting this. Like I didn't pull up. I can pull up the tweet I sent when he was signed. I won't waste more time on the podcast. But the point is, it was expected that he would go to San Francisco and dramatically improve overnight. Like when you have such a reputation that people just assume that's going to happen, and then it does happen. Have some self-awareness, have some accountability for your own actions. If I had, had an opinion that was 100% diametrically opposed to the truth, eventually I'd admit it to myself. All right. If for instance, I thought the Will Myers trade was the worst trade the Royals had ever made, and it turned out to be one of the best, you know what? I'd eat some crow and swallow my pride and sit down and write a column about, gee, I screwed this up. Why did I screw it up? Let's go through my thought process here. Maybe the Royals should do that too. But the more they hold on to Cal Eldred, the more they tell us we're not willing to look at what we've done wrong. And to me, here's to follow up on what you're saying. I completely agree. Going into the season, like all we were asking for, all I personally was asking for was that the Royals should find a new pitching coach. Here we are. The Royals are 17-35 now, right? And if you are ownership, if you're John Sherman, there are different levels of accountability you can take here. Level one is do nothing. Okay. Which is to this point what the Royals have done. They fired Terry Bradshaw. By the way, just you were saying Terry Shumpert. I think you meant Terry Bradshaw.
I did, yeah. I'm sorry.
Terry Shumpert was a second baseman from 30 years ago. Terry Bradshaw was a Hall of Fame quarterback who somehow ended up as the Royals pitching coach. Hitting coach. Very complicated. Yes. But to level one, do nothing. Level two, fire Cal Eldred, but find a new pitching coach. No other changes. Which again, as recently as 2 months ago, that's all I wanted. Level two was where I think most fans were at. Level three, you got to clean house a bit more. You have to get rid of both Eldred and Mike Matheny. Level four, you burn it to the ground and you fire the front office, Piccolo, Dayton Moore. Like these, and going into the season, I don't know anybody who was like advocating for level four. Mike Matheny, maybe some. But I think people were at level two. The longer the people in charge of making that level two decision refuse to make a level two decision, the more likely the Royals will need to make a level three or even a level four decision. And the front office has to decide, is your loyalty to Cal Eldred so intense that you're willing for everybody to be held accountable for it? If that's your level of belief in him, okay, more power to you. But then be prepared for the consequences. Because if I'm John Sherman and I see my team has got the worst record in the game, and my front office is everything's hunky-dory, I'm starting to my level of who I'm questioning as the source of our organization's problems starting to move up the organizational pyramid.
I want to go back to something Steve said. The 12,000 who are at the K today on a beautiful Sunday afternoon with school out speaks very loudly. And then Michael added in, had 19,000 at Sporting Park for the soccer game. The U.S. men's national team was in Kansas City playing Uruguay today. Tells you where our youth, where the youth are is what I think you meant, are spending their discretionary income, and it's not at Kauffman. That is the kind of stuff that will speak very loudly, I think, to an ownership and to a business side. And, the business side is not thrilled to see 12,000 people spinning through. I mean, there's only so much marketing you can do. Winning is what ultimately puts people in the stands. They're not winning, and they're also not just buying, what are we at now? About a 6-something OPS from Bobby Witt Jr. Like if anybody is benefiting from the struggles, from the consternation about Cal Eldred that goes on, all the talking about Cal Eldred, the frustration, it's that Bobby Witt Jr. is not, exploding. We mentioned the Astros shortstop,
Jeremy Pena,
who is, barreling towards Rookie of the Year with an OPS over 800, while Bobby Witt Jr. is OPSing around what?
I think he's up to. He actually hit 700 today. He right on the dot.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah,
so 700
today. Yep.
Which listen, and there's plenty of time for him to come back and end up making that number a really good one. But it's that's where I come back to when you talk about level 4 and burning it all down. What are you pointing to that's the success right now? Right? Because even the can't miss prospect is not is looking like a solid player, like a developmental. On down the road, he's going to be pretty good when he was supposed to be. When you take a guy number 2, it's not supposed. Listen, let's be clear. Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas really didn't live up to number 2, number 3 draft pick guys, right? I mean, you're supposed to be better than that. And certainly the timeline it took for them to really get going was not the kind of timeline you expect when you take a guy that high. And this seems like Bobby Witt Jr. is headed that same direction, does it not?
It's early, and actually, I mean, again, it's a
testament.
It's early in his career for sure. I mean, we were talking about Eric Hosmer and the 1,500 plate appearances. That was their excuse. I mean, he has 200 plate appearances, 205 or 206 now. And again, with offense being as low as it is now, his OPS plus is right at is actually 101. I mean, he's technically been above average as a hitter. I wouldn't even say disappointed. I'm not happy with how he's hitting, I would say, but I'm not sad either. Like, He is not the problem. His development is not really my concern.
No, that's my point is not to have a referendum on Bobby Witt Jr. My point is because yes, I mean we can keep getting going and saying okay, well this guy he's you can't throw him out. I'm not saying throw him out. I mean somebody come up and kick ass.
Yeah. Well, that has been a source of frustration for me for really the entire Dayton Moore era, that none of the guys, they haven't had one guy who just came up and dominated from day one. Everybody has had fits and starts. Hosmer, Moustakis, Whit Merrifield, slowly developed into a great player. I guess the closest would be Salvador Perez. Actually, I'll take it back. Salvi hit 331 as a rookie when no one was expecting anything from him except defense. Then I think he hurt his knee and missed the first half of his sophomore season, came back and hit 301. So Salvador Perez would be the one guy. It's just ironic that he was the guy that nobody expected to be an elite hitter out of the chute. But yeah, they haven't. I mean, Bobby Witt, Alex Gordon, really, those are the two best hitting prospects that they have had since, I don't know, Johnny Damon and Mike Sweeney and Carlos Beltran. And the two best prospects of the 21st century. And Witt is better than Gordon. Gordon at this point in early June almost went to the minor leagues. He was hitting like 170 as a rookie, and eventually settled in and had a decent rookie season, but then took some steps backward and really had to remake himself in the minor leagues, change position, all of that. It would be nice to have somebody dominate from day one. I actually still think at the end of the season, you talk about his OPS, 700 now. I think Bobby Witt, his OPS will be over 750 at the end of the year. And I think we'll look at it and be like, this is a really good building block for a long, productive, maybe.
So what are we looking at? Are you looking at Alex Gordon, or are you looking at a superstar?
I think he will be better than Alex Gordon. I still do. I really do. And let's be honest, because there are so many ways that his career, he could do it in so many ways. He could do it the Alex Gordon way, which is to be a good hitter and a transcendent fielder, guy who just provides so much value on defense. He could do it with his speed. I mean, the guy has arguably the fastest player in baseball in terms of sprint speed. He gets up to 31 feet per second. With 30 feet per second is considered an elite sprint speed. He gets up to 31 as more than anybody in baseball, except I believe Trey Turner this season. He has had more runs, home to first runs at that speed level than everybody but Trey Turner. And he's a rookie. So there's that. And then he could do it with his bat. So I think
will he have more than 3 seasons of an 800 OPS? Because that's exactly what Alex Gordon did. Career OPS 748, 3 seasons. 10.
Assuming we're not going into like another dead ball era of offense, yes, I think he will.
Okay,
I really do.
All right, significantly better.
I think he will get to a 900 OPS.
Well, I mean, this is. I mean, because again, and he's going to be. I think I agree. He's going to be a good player. But how many they have picked since Dayton Moore took over? They have picked how many top players? 1 in 06, 2 in 07, 3 in 08, 4 in 10, 5 in 11, 5 in 12, 8 in 13. And they had a stretch where they didn't pick in the top 10. 2 in 19, 4th in 20, and 7th in 21. And they're barreling towards getting another top 5 pick. I mean, are you really like what has to happen? Doesn't somebody out of Asa Lacy, Frank Mazzucato, who had one of the weirder starts you're ever going to see, 3 1/3, no hits, 2 runs, 2 earned, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts. I don't even know. I went back and read on it. There's errors. There's, it's a goofy deal. I don't think he got the fate he deserved in that. But, Mazzucato, Lacy, you can't take all these guys in the top 10 and be like, well, they're going to be a good player. You have to, at some point, have a star.
Well, the first thing you could do is, what is it that so many of those picks have in common is their pitchers. Lacy, Mazzucato. Like, I'm looking at the top 10 picks that were actually hitters before Bobby Witt. I mean, you have Prado was the 14th pick in 2017. But all the other picks in between then and going all the way back to Hunter Dozier in 2013, every other top 30 pick was a pitcher. And, pitchers are always going to be more high variance than hitters, but especially when we just talked about who's your pitching coach at the major league level. That's why it was so frustrating when there were two really good high school hitters on the board last year. They went with Frank Mazzucato. It might still work out. That start, to me, it just says, this is a guy with really good stuff and doesn't have command yet. And you know what? For an 18-year-old, I'll take that for now. I'm not, to me, right now, the decision to take Mazzucato is not my biggest issue, remotely my biggest issue with this team right now. But it would be nice to get a couple superstar hitters in this organization. I think Bobby Witt is good. I'll tell you, to me, the other reason why I'm not so worried about Bobby Witt is that Bobby Witt isn't actually the Royals rookie who's having a really good offensive season. MJ Melendez is quietly having, I think his OPS plus was 130 coming into today. And his strikeout and walk numbers are terrific. I mean, that was the thing that really struck me about him last year and why I thought he was a better prospect than Nick Prado, was that unlike Prado, who, had great power, but also had a strikeout rate that was kind of out of control, MJ Melendez in the minor leagues had a really good strikeout rate for a guy who led the minors in home runs. And coming in today, 22 strikeouts and 101 plate appearances? That's the league average strikeout rate for a guy who's, a rookie with pop who was slugging .467. So, maybe MJ Melendez is going to be, the all-star caliber hitter that we were hoping some of the other guys could be. If both Bobby Witt and MJ Melendez are above average hitters, if the Royals ever get off their schneid, we haven't even mentioned Vinny Pasquantino to this point in the podcast. Speaking of, unwilling to admit you've made a mistake. But if Pasquantino or Prado comes up and gives the Royals a third under 25 rookie hitter who's league average or better, there is a core here. Again, we've said that before. There is talent here.
But let me do this with you. I don't know if you heard any of the radio show this week. I know you have a day job. But we pointed this out on Friday, right? Like, let me give you the 2015 Astros that took on the Royals in the playoffs. What was their everyday guys? Jason Castro, gone. Chris Carter, gone. Jose Altuve, still there. Carlos Correa, gone. Luis Valbuena, gone. Preston Tucker, gone. Jake Marisnick, gone. George Springer, gone. Evan Gattis, gone. Colby Rasmus, gone. Those are your bats. Here's the staff. Dallas Keuchel, gone. Colin McHugh, gone. Lance McCullers, gone, right? He's in Philly now, right? Scott Feldman, gone. Roberto Hernandez, gone. Scott Kazmir, gone. Closer, Luke Gregerson, gone. They've turned over the entire team, save Jose Altuve, which people will remember. Royals fans thought that the Astros would be selling him in like 13 and 14. And that was always the white whale to trade for Jose Altuve to fill the second base spot for the Royals, which they didn't do. Since 14, the Astros have won 80, or since 15, they've won 84, 101, 103, 107, went 29 and 31 in the pandemic shortened season, but lost in the ALCS. That was good enough to get them into the extended playoffs. And I guarantee you, had they played those other 102 games, I'm quite confident it would have been a winning record.
Yeah.
95 wins last year. They currently sit at 35
and 19. Right. But we're told the Royals tell us it takes years to rebuild. They rebuilt
on the fly while picking below you.
Exactly. Picking 28th every year. They completely turn. I mean, look at their roster now and look at some of the players that they've added. Yuli Gurriel. They spent money on a Cuban free agent. That was risky, but it worked for them, right? If you pick the right guy, it's worth it. The Royals go out and sign Noel Arguelles for $6.9 million or whatever, and never throws a pitch in the major leagues. Kyle Tucker, you talk about superstar in the draft, first round pick, high school hitter. Kyle Tucker, like he got on my radar screen when someone told me that he has a batting stance closer to what Ted Williams looked like. So close to Ted Williams' stance that when they did a documentary, it was PBS did an American Masters biography on Ted Williams. Kyle Tucker, who was still in Double-A, they used him as the stand-in for Ted Williams' swing when he was like 20 years old. That got my attention. I'm like, I need to pay attention to who this kid is. And he's not Ted Williams, but he's a damn good hitter. Again, first round draft pick, right? Yordan Alvarez. They traded Josh Fields. Talk about being transactional. They traded a reliever to the Dodgers for Yordan Alvarez, who'd come over from Cuba and I believe had yet to even play a professional game. They got him, and he just signed a 5-year contract extension.
6-year, 115.
6 years.
Escalators, I can take it up.
One of the best hitters in baseball. No defensive value, but the dude can absolutely rake. Right? They had so much talent.
I don't know. The Royals broadcast was hyping him today about how well he had played in the outfield in this series.
Well, that too. Great. That doesn't matter. Either way, he's a phenomenal player. They had so much excess talent. They went out and traded for Justin Verlander. Like they are a talent development machine. But they're also, I should say, they're a talent scouting and development machine. The Royals may have the talent scouting. They don't have the development. And to act like you have nothing to learn from other organizations, when the Astros come into town and kick your butt like they've been kicking your butt ever since 2016, and like you said, doing it with a completely new roster, there are no excuses. There are no excuses for saying we need time to build when the Astros can build and win at the same time without the draft advantages you have.
Well, and here's the other issue. I mean, you mentioned Josh Fields was traded for Yordan Alvarez, right? That was the deal. It happened in 2016. The Royals in 16 were defending a world championship, so I get that you can't go make that move. But Josh Fields was a player that had some success, I guess, and yet they're able to spin him. I mean, it wasn't phenomenal.
Right. Remember that the 2016 Astros were not a bad team. They went 84-78, but that was literally the one and only year since 2015 where they were not in the playoffs. And it's like, well, we're not going to make it this year. Let's package, some of our ready talent guys now that are going to be free agents and get something for them. The Royals have had the advantage of doing that every single year since 2018 and could have made that decision in May or June or, not just in July. And here we are. Andrew Benintendi, no sign of him being traded, right? Like, you have so many advantages when it comes to building for the future. The Royals have tremendous advantages the Astros don't have, which is that they're not trying to win now. If the Astros can win now and not sacrifice for the future, the Royals are out of excuses. And to get back to some of the tweets or quotes you put up on the screen about fans talking about the attendance numbers. If I'm a Royals owner, that really gets my attention, not just because attendance is down, but because there is no longer even like the potential for an excuse from the front office that, Kansas City can't support a good attendance, because of the market size, all the excuses we hear. We saw the crowds that came out when this team was good.
2.5 million.
2.7 million in 2015, 2.5 million in 2016, the year after when they, didn't make the playoffs and were only marginally competitive in September. You can I never after that. I
want to point out, and on that 2016 2.5 million, back-to-back years of significant price increases.
Yeah.
Right? 14 went to the World Series. Everything was more expensive. In 15, 2.7 million. Which they should. They ratcheted the price up again. And they still and the fans still said, okay, we'll
pay. I never want to hear Kansas City can't support a major league team. I mean, Kansas City, for its population, is absolute baseball hotbed. And we saw it for years, even after the attendance went down. We saw it with the TV ratings. The local TV ratings are consistently, one of the highest in baseball, not even accounting for the fact that the team is bad. So if the Royals are drawing 12,000 now, that's not because they can't. It's not because the fans can't come out. It's not because they don't have the fans. Because the fans won't. And the fans won't because you will not give them a product worth watching and because you refuse to acknowledge you can do better.
All right. I want to get to a couple other nuggets here along the way. Brady Singer getting knocked around over the weekend, blip on the radar screen, regression back to the norm. What do you view it as?
To me, it is simply that he's always going to be homer prone because of the type of pitch repertoire he has. And when you're homer prone, you're going to have those outs where you give up 3 bombs and just you get lit up. But even in there, I mean, you give up 3 home runs, His strikeout and walk data was very good. He's got 30 walks and 4 strikeouts. 30 strikeouts and 4 walks. Not even a Cal Eldred pitcher would have 30 walks and 4 strikeouts. 30 strikeouts and 4 walks. He had 4 strikeouts and no walks in that outing. If he continues to have 4 walks per 30 innings for the season, I'm actually bullish still on what he's doing.
The fact that he didn't just get knocked out of the game quickly, and that it was a tough day. Now I don't want to see this every time out. But 5 innings, he's getting hit around. He didn't start nibbling. And like you said, start putting guys on base via the walk, which is what gets you out of there, and manage to eat some innings. Let me see what he does the next time. Next time I really want it to be a good outing. But if these are the bad outings, the really bad ones, these are the worst ones, I can live with that, right? You can't have 10 of them.
Right.
We all understand that. But he was at least in there battling. And I'll take that.
Right now, if the Royals somehow magically found themselves in Game 7 of the World Series right now, and you had to have one guy to take the mound, and actually, not a bullpen game or whatever, you need a starter, I would pick Brady Singer, not Daniel Lynch right now.
Jonathan Heasley, more strikeouts than walks, first time all year.
Yep.
Progress today?
Progress, yeah. I'm afraid to give any proclamations about any of our pitchers so long as Cal Eldred is there, because I just cannot rule out that their struggles would not be repaired with better coaching. Jonathan Heasley in the minor leagues showed me the potential to be at least a number 4 starter in the major leagues. And despite, again, some hideous strikeout and walk data, this is a guy who I think now he had a 476 career. It's probably around 470 now, 465 ERA in 40 major league innings. That's a battler. At this point, I think he's still one of the 5 best starting pitchers the Royals have at the moment. When Zach Greinke comes back, I'd rather see Chris Bubich go back to AAA just because I think he still has some things to work on. I think you benefit from it more, as Jonathan Heasley at this point has already had the benefit of being in the minor leagues to start the year. But I can't make my mind up about any of these guys until Cal Eldred is gone.
Jose Cuas, a guy that you talked about, loving the sidearm, limited sample size, but certainly looks like this is, and I know Sean said, aren't the Rays an organization to mimic smallish market city that has been in the playoffs 7 of the last 15 years? Yes, they are, and one of the things they do is give different looks from their pitching staff. You pointed this out. He was part of your minor league minute last week, and so far so good. I mean, he looks like a guy that is tough for hitters to lock in on after they see, because the Royals seemingly had this cookie cutter approach to guys, right? They wanted this over the top and their curveball, and this is a guy that doesn't fit their profile. He gives a different look, and he's been very effective.
Yeah, and I mean, it is admittedly a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but one of my pet peeves about being a Royals fan over the last 35 years, and this is not meant to impugn Dayton Moore and the organization now, because this has been well predated them, but the team that gave Dan Quisenberry a chance, maybe the most unconventional closer in the history of the game. I think Bill James had the line, which is hard to refute, that no pitcher in the history of baseball made fewer mistakes than Dan Quisenberry. And I think statistically, you can actually back that up. His walk rate, if you take out his intentional walks, and his home run rate, both are among the greatest in Major League history. Dan Quisenberry throwing, I don't even know what he threw, like 82 maybe he topped out at. I would love to have some StatCast data on Dan Quisenberry.
Right.
Even a radar gun would be good. And that guy was the closer for some great Royals teams. Throwing 140 innings in a season. That same organization, ever since his career ended, has almost gone out of its way to avoid any kind of pitchers that throw unconventionally. It's just so frustrating that it's like you have seen the success of that approach and how it can elevate the stuff. And I put stuff in air quotes because I'm not sure you would call it what Dan Quisenberry threw stuff, but elevated the stuff of a guy who threw in the low 80s to be one of the best relievers in the game. How can you look at that and not be like, let's find a guy who can do that and throw harder or throw, just let's find guys who pitch differently, because so much of pitching is deception. And the way to deceive the hitter is to throw differently than the last guy that the hitter saw. So the fact that Jose Cuas is, in the organization is itself, a minor miracle. And I give credit to them that they gave this guy a chance. He had, been a position player first. And, but even as a pitcher, I think he was with the Diamondbacks and they let him go as a pitcher before the Royals got a hold of him. He had been in independent ball. But yeah, it's only been 2 innings. I'm not looking at the his results so much as just the stuff. This is a guy who throws sidearm, not submarine, but sidearm, and his sinkers average 93.1 miles an hour right now. You give me that, and with movement, you give me that guy with a sinker in the low 90s, his sliders coming in around 82. That's almost major league average velocity right there, but from a very unusual motion. If the Royals give him the opportunity, if they keep him away from a Cal Eldred, maybe in this case, his motion is so different that Cal Eldred is going to put his hands up and be like, I don't even know what to do with the guy. Just let him do what he does. But if they give him an opportunity, I could see this guy being a part of this bullpen for the next 5-6 years and being a lot more valuable than some of the, top 20 prospects in the system, whatever. This guy could have a real future with the organization.
I will trade any reliever to get a core piece to the team, because I think you can find these guys. So if somebody would give you, a center fielder, that somebody who can play center field and hit to finish off your team, I think that's the direction you need to go as an organization. I want to zero in on a couple of questions we had. One I got on Twitter, an OK Boomer shot me. Do you or Rany have a suggestion for pitching coach in or outside the organization? It seems minor league coaches are getting through to the pitchers, right? Is that what this organization needs? Do you have, if not him, then who? You have your answer? I think the fans are at anybody. But do you have a who?
I mean, I think because it's midseason, I don't think you can go. The rules do not allow you to go and necessarily hire a pitching coach from another organization during the season. So I think Dane Johnson is probably the obvious name, and I think I've heard enough good things from him that I'd like to see. I'd like to see him get the opportunity between now and the rest of the season. I think by the end of the year, you cast a very wide net from the major leagues to college coaches. You can look in a lot of places, but I don't think it's too late to bring somebody in from in-house. I actually on that subject, let's look at what has happened since the Royals fired Terry Bradshaw and brought Alex Zumwalt in as hitting coach. So he was fired on the morning of May 16th, Terry Bradshaw. I have the numbers here. Up until that date, the Royals offense was hitting 225, 290, 336. 225 batting, 290 OBP, 336 slugging. Since then, not including, I don't have today's numbers, although they hit fairly well. They scored 4 runs. They're hitting 256. So that batting average went up 31 points. OBP of 312 went up 22 points. Slugging 401, up 65 points. 256, 312, 401. Pretty sure that's above the American League average. Yeah, the American League average is 236, 305, 381. So actually substantially above average. Now, some of that is warmer weather since mid-May. The ball's moving a little bit more. Some of that is, frankly, personnel. Less Carlos Santana and more MJ Melendez since mid-May is probably helping. So there are probably a few factors there. But there's certainly no evidence that, Zumwalt has made things worse, and some evidence that he's making things better already. So, yeah, look, yet another data point for the Royals to consider. You made one change, not the one that all the fans were clamoring for, but you made the one change. It's working. So maybe you should consider another one, whether it's Dane Johnson or anybody else. I think it's time.
All right, and let me get this from Chris. Chris Martin says, how close are you guys to phase 4 clean house? Like you mentioned the different phases that are there. How close are you saying phase 4? I can go first or I'll go second.
I'll answer just to say I'm not there yet, but I wasn't even considering level 4 2 months ago. It really wasn't on my radar. I really thought this front office was the changes they'd made with minor league development, with Prado and Melendez, the good things I was seeing. it was the last thing on my mind was we need to clean house. And I'm at least considering it. I'm at level 3 now, I will say. I'm not advocating for it, but and I don't think Mike Matheny has necessarily held the team back, except for possibly his insistence on keeping Cal Eldred. But I just don't see how he's pushing. I haven't seen that he's pushing the Royals towards contention. So I'm already at that point, but we're getting there.
I will tell you that it's on the table. I don't think there's a reason. And I talked about this with Keith Law this week. By the way, you can catch, I talked to Keith Law and Jeff Passan. Passan ended up being a lot about fantasy baseball. But the Keith Law conversation, because of the Tommy Pham thing and everything, then we got into our own fantasy teams. But the Keith Law conversation on Friday was really good. And, I said, I'm not a proponent of changing GMs, or in this case, changing presidents in season. And he said, agreed. Right. So I'm putting it on the table. I won't execute it till the end of the year. I don't, and frankly, I think 2 pennants in a world championship deserves that. Deserves a chance to go to the end of the year, and deserves the opportunity, if I were John Sherman and I said, okay, I'm going to make a change, to give Dayton Moore the chance to say, okay, I'm retiring. I'm walking away. To let Dayton Moore walk away, to frame it how he wants to frame it.
Right.
I think it's on the table now. I think when we're talking about, for me, you can't have the worst record in baseball. The Omaha team is starting to win games. I will point that out. But now you start to wonder, well, is that Pasquantino, I think, had 1 hit today. They were rained out today. He had 1 hit Saturday, no hits on Friday. I think Prado is kind of struggling right now. His batting average now down to like 215 or something like that. You can't have a dismal minor league season, a dismal major league season, and have all your high picks. I mean, who from Latin America? You brought this up. Where is the Latin American, player coming forward?
Right.
The international player. And your first round draft picks cannot come to the end of this year, and you're still sitting with Asa Lacy in Double-A. You Mazzucato
or on the IL, which is where he is right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but even though he's got to get back, the Double-A should have been a way station this year, right? Like the plan, like if you had the Royals contending, it was with Asa Lacy at the top of the rotation in August and September. That's the formula, because he's got a much better pedigree than anybody else, including Brady Singer, because Asa Lacy wasn't considered for a top pick. He was a top pick. And so that guy needed to find it fast, rock it through Double-A and Triple-A, and be on the big league club at the end of the year. There is no indication that that's going to happen. And, one of the other things Keith Law said to me this week was that, I read from his piece that Kyle Zimmer was one of the best pitching prospects he'd ever seen. He goes, now, I saw him 2 different times when he was one of the rare times he was actually healthy. Okay, pitchers get hurt, but you don't get to lose 2 top 5 guys. You don't. You have to wonder, is the organization doing something wrong? Do they not know how to keep guys healthy? Like at that point.
Or do you just have to accept that the reason why these guys are falling to where you're drafting is because the rest of baseball understands that no matter how good a pitching prospect a guy looks like, there is an inherent risk to drafting pitchers, right? Like if I told you, here are 2 players. Player A, we think is going to be a quality league average player in the major leagues. Player B has the talent to be an all-star in the major leagues. But if you draft player B, there's an 80% chance he will spontaneously explode in the next 12 months. And you draft player B and he spontaneously explodes. And you say, well, we were right about his talent. Yeah, but you knew he could explode. Right. That's what pitchers are. Their arms at any moment.
Backs. They're NFL running backs. You don't give them mega contracts. Listen, and I'll go back to something Allard Baird told me a long time ago about the draft. He said, we have to get out of picking in the top 5 and at least get into the middle, because when you're in the top 5, you make decisions like that. Like, okay, I got to get something out of this guy. Like Luke Hochevar went 1-1 to the Royals, who Dayton Moore finally years later admitted, yes, he had influence on that pick. After originally, remember, it was this mystery pick that was attached to no one. Because you take Luke Hochevar because you just want to make sure you get something from him at number 1. And he said, look, He goes, on my list that year before he got fired was Andrew Miller, Brad Lincoln, who got hurt, by the way, top 5 pick, Tim Lincecum, and Max Scherzer. Those were the guys that were in. He said, Lincecum's got a funky delivery and a lot of innings on him, and he's tiny. It's going to be really tough to take him. He said, I love the guy. I think he's electric. I think he's going to be really good. But if he blows up before we ever get him to the big leagues, the organization won't recover from it. He said, I love Max Scherzer, but his shoulders there's already a shoulder question there. Again, he blows up before we get him to the big leagues. We can't do it. He goes, it probably comes down to, I got to take Andrew Miller because he's the most projectable guy who ended up being the third best of those because Lincoln then blew up. But I think that mindset that he was talking about is part of the problem for the Royals too. Like with the pitching, if you can get down later, you can take Tim Lincecum at 14 or 15 and nobody freaks out and you get the higher end talent. If it blows up at 14 or 15, so be it, because you're not taking a guy 1-1. When you take a guy at 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, in my opinion, they have to hit. They have to land.
Well, Soren, I would go a step further.
We can talk about all we want, all their justifications for it. They made their pick, and if they're not coming along, then yes, then phase 4 is in effect, and you have to blow it all up.
So I'll take it a step further. I think the Royals should stop drafting the top 5 because drafting the top 5 means you suck. There's that too. But here's the good news, which is actually terrible news. The good news is the Royals may not draft in the top 5 next year. The bad news is that's because for the first time in the history of baseball, we have a draft lottery, which means that the team with the worst record in baseball is not guaranteed to draft in the top 2. So the Royals could draft even if they have the worst record in the game, could draft as low as 7th. The first 6 picks are in the lottery. So I've seen already a lot of fans being like, oh, we're aiming for the first pick now. Nuh-uh. You might. I think I don't know. I think the number of balls in the lottery, it's maybe a 15% shot, I think, for the number 1 pick. Maybe it's a little bit higher. But yeah, there's a chance they won't draft in the top 5. And not because they won't deserve it, but simply because there's a new rule now.
But doesn't that make it even more critically important that they don't just leave everybody around for some bogus September 3 game over 500 statement that they, to try to sell that things are coming along? This thing has to be bombed to make sure that they're no lower than 7th.
I think at this point, the difference between 7 and 8 is versus 1 and 2. The point of the rule, I agree with the lottery. I agree with the rule change because nothing is more soul sucking as a fan than to be, of two minds about whether or not you really want your team to win today's game because the cost of winning that game in terms of the draft is so high. The one thing I will say is right now, I don't feel the need to, kind of quietly root for the Royals to lose, even though they, hopefully play well, somehow thread that needle where all their important players play well, but the unimportant players screw it up and they lose because I want that first pick. The way I look at it, the needle's not moving if you lose 100 games or you lose 92 games. Your odds are about the same. So I would rather just do what's best for the organization. But what's best for the organization right now is to trade Andrew Benintendi and to get rid of some of the talent that is helping you win now, maybe Scott Barlow, in order to play for the future. And that's never been the Royals' MO.
100%. And I'll disagree. The lottery changes nothing. It changes nothing. And they will see it has changed nothing in the NBA. Tanking still exists. The Sixers were rewarded. They just had to do it more times and for longer. It's actually a horrible rule. If you want teams to get out of purgatory, if you want them, or it's not even purgatory, it's hell. If you want them to get out of losing hell, I'm sorry, you need to expedite the tanking process. Give them 2 picks. Okay. Help them rebuild faster because making it harder for them, there's still no way for teams that suck to be like, okay, they're not going to go spend $50 million to finish with the 10th pick.
You want to know what the rule I wanted baseball to adopt was? And I still hold out hope that one day we'll see something like this. I wanted to see the teams that don't make the playoffs draft in decreasing order of wins. So basically the best team that doesn't make the playoffs gets the number 1 pick. Yeah. That will eliminate taking 100% if every game you lose actually hurts your draft position unless you make the playoffs.
Oh,
I
relegation.
don't think we'll see it.
And I
Well,
actually,
relegation would be that would be the ultimate dream.
it's
But
the only thing that will actually listen.
let's be thankful we're not the Royals. That we don't play with relegation. The Royals would be in like the 4th division, playing like Huddleston FC or something of baseball by now, because the Royals would have been out of the major leagues a long time ago.
I'm going to tell you there is no avoiding tanking. There is no avoiding tanking. None. You can't. It's impossible. You have no choice but to amass your resources. And that comes with tanking. And it's preposterous to keep thinking you can incentivize teams. I get what you're saying. And if you did that, that's the closest thing without relegation that could work, is to say, okay, we've got to try to win some games to get up. But then does that actually backfire because you hang on to turds, and which then sends the team even further? We could talk about that another time. We're a long way into this one here tonight. We'll get into that more. That sounds like a great off-season
Yeah.
conversation as far as I'm concerned. You got a minor league minute you want to lob out there before we go?
As if this hasn't been depressing enough. You mentioned briefly the lack of success with Latin America. I specifically wanted to mention that Erick Pena, who the Royals gave $3.7 million to, I think the most money they've ever given to a international free agent, I guess out of the non-Cuban variety, but was a 16-year-old outfielder, great swing, incredible power. I believe Baseball Prospectus actually ranked him in their top 100 prospects 2 years ago before he'd ever played a professional at bat. That's how optimistic people were about this guy. And I hate to say it, but
well, I can say it if you want.
He's not very good. He hit last year was sobering in his pro debut. He hit 161, 256, 314 in rookie balls, an 18-year-old, struck out 57 times and 156 plate appearances. But okay, you see some high school guys who get drafted, their first, their pro debut is not very good. Okay, give him a mulligan. Well, this year he's hitting 135 in 38 games, 225 OBP, 278 slugging average, 63 strikeouts in 151 plate appearances in low A ball. He's 19 years old, but I mean those aren't bad numbers. Those are just terrible, unplayable numbers, and you could maybe find a prospect who hit that poorly, who went on to have a productive major league career, but I'd honestly love for somebody to find a player who was this bad and turned into something. Maybe he'll make the major leagues, but at this point, I'm basically prepared to write him off as a potential impact player at the majors. There's basically no precedent for somebody being this bad a hitter and turning it around. So,
Matt asked for this, so can you give us something to end so we don't jump off our roofs tonight? What I would give you is I think there are, to Randy's point, still productive pieces to be traded. And I think the further they go, the bigger the struggles are in the minor leagues, and the further they go and the more they drop down the standings in this one, the more important it is for them to just acknowledge that. Can you paint me a picture that next year is a contending season right now, Rany?
Not right now, no. But I will say, I mean, to me, the reason for optimism is there is some very promising young hitters. MJ Melendez's performance is, to me, the most important, most impressive part of this season, because we came into the season with him being a really good prospect, but there was still a lot of risk there. Bobby Witt, to me, was a can't miss in the sense that he couldn't possibly be horrible. I wasn't sure if he'd be great or not, but I thought he'd be good almost certainly. MJ Melendez could have fallen flat on his face, and he hasn't. And the fact that he's played this well, Witt is performing league average, which is perfectly fine. He's still 21 years old. What we saw from Edward Olivares, like there are players here who, if they give them the opportunity, if they just clean out some of the dreck and give some of these young guys, they have some early 20s hitters who have talent, who deserve a chance to play. So that's what I'm going to be looking at for the rest of the season, basically.
Yeah. We'll see I guess we're going to have to go all the way through the trade deadline with Carlos Santana. And when he's not traded, then at that point, perhaps, they'll release him. And I hate saying that because Carlos Santana was one of my favorite players. I mean, I loved Carlos Santana.
He's had an incredible career. I supported signing him. I'm not slagging them for signing him, but you got to stare reality in the face and be like, okay, this isn't working. It's not working with him. It's not working with Cal. And the Royals just got to start acknowledging reality when it hits them in the face.
Reality is here. It's the end of episode 9 of the Kaufman Corner. For Rany Jazayerli, my name is Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you back streaming live Sunday at 10 o'clock Central. You can catch us wherever you find your podcast here on Kaufman Corner.